All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. Sorry for the delay. I was having trouble getting the video to work, but got it working, so we're good to go. So we will start here with Dan A. It says, "Hi Q, would you mind explaining the lead shoulder going down and forward towards the target at the start of the downswing? Won't the head go forward too if I do that? And what do my arms do while I do that? And what do I do next specifically with the body, arms, and side tilt? Thanks." All right. Yeah. So, yes, the head is going to move down and forward. It's mostly going to move more down. So, when we go to the top of the swing, typically the head kind of moves more down. It may move a little bit forward. But what we also want to keep in mind is that the head is not perfectly still during the swing. I think some people have this idea that the head's perfectly still. When you look at the best players, typically what you're going to see is you're going to see the head move off the ball just a little bit, typically to start the backswing. And then it'll remain relatively still as they continue the backswing. But in the last part of the backswing, they'll typically move down and a lot of times a little bit forward. And then as they continue the downswing, it will continue to move down a little bit forward. I'm not talking like 6 inches forward. I'm talking a very, very small amount typically is how much it moves forward. But it will move down considerably with some players. Some players you'll see the head move down 6 inches, like Justin Thomas. His head really drops down. If you were to kind of draw a box around his swing, around his head during the swing, you'd see his head drops down considerably. But one thing we also have to keep in mind is that the shoulder can move independently of the head, right? So if I'm like this, I can keep my head totally still, and my shoulder moves forward and up, right? Now, if I had my bigger turn, my head would be moving, or my shoulder could be moving down and then up without my head really moving at all, right? So, yes, the head does move a little bit, but it's just where we get into trouble with the head moving is when it's just excessive. And when it's excessive, it's because our spine isn't very stable and fluid throughout the swing, right? It means that we're moving our spine too much everywhere, and that's typically where that comes from. And then goes on to say, what are my arms doing when I do that? Your arms are going to be moving down, right? So your arms are going to be doing this, right? So if I'm at the top of the swing, I'm moving forward, my arms are moving down, right? So it's almost like if you were to doing a medicine ball throw and you're slamming the ball, obviously you're not slamming your arms down, but that's your arms are moving down a little bit. And what do I do next specifically with my body, arms, and side tilt? So you already asked about the arms. The side tilt, you're going to be gradually working into, if you're a right-handed golfer, into right side bend. It's gradual, right? So right side bend is when my hips are level and I'm tilting my rib cage this way. You're going to be gradually working toward that. You'll be maxing that out. We're coming pretty close to maxing that out at the impact position, then coming back up out of it, right? So I'm moving into right side bend, right side bend, right side bend, toward right side bend. Doesn't mean you're going to be in right side bend, but you're working toward right side bend, because at the top of the swing, you're actually going to be in left side bend, right? So at the top, if you look here, I'm at the top, I'm going to be in a little bit of left side bend, and then I'm working toward right side bend as I'm moving down. All right, let's keep questions coming. While y'all are coming up with questions, I'm just going to be doing, answering emails and stuff like that. So keep the questions coming if you have them. If not, no worries. So Jeff T says, I'm having issues with fat and thin shots, ground contact. Which part of the Top Speed Golf system would I dial back into? It really depends on what the root cause is for the issue. I would start with the stable fluid spine. I mean, that can have a lot to do with it. But I actually have a video where it's kind of a complete guide to fat and thin shots, and it goes over all the things that I see that I typically, or all the main things that I typically see when people struggle with fat and thin shots. If you're struggling with fat and thin shots, it's more than likely because the bottom of your swing is occurring before the ball, right? So if you think about, the club comes down on an arc, right? It comes down in an arc like this. The bottom of this arc is what's referred to as a low point. We want the bottom of this arc to be ahead of, on the target side of the ball, and slightly below the ball. It's usually going to be about 3 or 4 inches in front of the ball. If you're hitting fat and thin shots, it's usually because the bottom of that swing arc is occurring at, or sometimes even before the ball, right? So that can lead to those fat and thin shots, because when you do that, when the bottom of your swing is occurring at the ball, your best case scenario is essentially a thin shot. And then if you hit the ground, it's going to be a chunk shot. So you just more than likely need to get the bottom of your swing more in front of the ball. The first thing I look at is the ball position. I don't know where all the balls went here, but I would look at the ball position first and foremost. Ball position for an iron, I like to see middle to just forward of the middle of the stance. All right, so that's going to look about like that. If you have the ball position up here, you're going to tend to struggle more than likely with fat and thin shots, unless there's just other things going on in your swing that you're making up for that. All right, so ball position middle to just forward of the middle of the stance would be a good start. The next piece I would look at is how your hips are moving in the backswing, right? Typically, when I see people struggle with the fat and thin shots, they have a hip slide, right? So they're going like this, right? So their hips are moving too far away from the target. And when you do that, when you move, I'm exaggerating, but when you're over here, you can imagine how it's going to be difficult to get the bottom of the swing to be forward, right? I want to have a little bit of a move off the ball. I want to laterally move my hips a little bit away from the target to start my backswing, but I don't want to keep them there. As soon as I get my hips there, right, I want to push my hip back and around. I want to stay relatively centered between my feet, right? So that's kind of a big part of it. So if you have the hip slide, a chair drill, which I'll give you the link to the video here in a minute, but I go over the chair drill. Basically, you set up with the chair on your hip, you nudge the chair to start the backswing, and then you move your hip a little bit away from the chair as you get to the top of the swing. So that's the next thing. The next thing I would look at after that is, are you moving off of your trail side and getting your momentum to move forward as you get up to the top of the swing and as you continue the downswing? So a lot of times I see people who don't start to get their momentum forward, or don't get their momentum forward at all in the downswing, right? So they're at the top of the swing, and maybe they're at the top of the swing, and this is when they start their momentum forward. We actually need to start getting our momentum forward in the last part of the backswing. Or they get to the top of the swing and they never get their momentum forward. You can imagine how hanging back is going to lead to those chunks and thins and things like that. So another drill that's good for that is a step drill, right? And I go over the drill, a good progression that you can work through in there. The next thing I would look at is shallowing out the club. If you're over shallowing out the club, swinging too much from the inside, you think about it this way. If I'm swinging, if I'm standing at home plate on a baseball field and I swing in the direction of first base, where's my club going to bottom out at? It's going to bottom out more back here. If I swing in the direction of third base, that'd be like an over-the-top swing, right? It's going to bottom out more in front of my lead foot. This is a big reason why a lot of people come over the top, is because if they don't, they're going to chunk it, right? So swinging over the top is a way to get the bottom of the swing forward. It's not the way that we want to do it, but it is a solution. It is something you can fix that problem with, right? So if you're overshotting the club, swinging the club too much from the inside, that can lead to those chunk shots as well. So again, in that video, I go over a drill. The last piece I see is the release. And a lot of you might be thinking, yep, that's my problem. The release might be, part of your, something that you struggle with, but it's not typically the number one reason why people chunk and thin the ball. It usually has to do with those things that I mentioned initially, because you can have an early release and still make really great ball first contact, as long as you're doing all the things I just mentioned, right? As long as you have good ball position, as long as you're not sliding, you're swaying in the backswing, as long as you're getting a good weight shift forward. The only time it's really a problem is when you have backward shaffling. So you're coming into contact and you look like this, right? So your weight and everything is forward, and it's pretty rare. I don't see too many golfers that look like this, where their hands are behind the club head at impact and they have a good weight shift forward. I see it sometimes when they're hanging back and they're like this. This is a totally different story. But if I get my body forward, like I just talked about, right, then that's going to lead that, you know, you just don't see this very often where people have their hands forward like this. So I would only say work on the release to fix the chunking issue if you have backward shaftling at contact. If you're doing everything I just talked about leading up to that, and you have backward shaftling. And the reason why I say this is because the release is one of the most difficult things to change in the golf swing. All the other things I mentioned, you know, changing the ball position, I mean, that's about as easy as it gets for a adjustment, right? The hip sway, that's something that you could probably get under control easily in one range session, right? If you work through it correctly. Getting your weight shift to move forward, again, another one that you could probably, you know, work through in one range session and get on the right track. You're not going to go through one range session and suddenly start releasing it like Tiger, right? Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. There's just so many things that go into changing the release. I'm not going to go into all of that, but essentially, it's the most difficult thing to change. So I wouldn't work on that unless you have backward shaftling, and then in that case, it's a little bit easier to go from backward shaftling to having a little bit of shaftling, right? So those would be the things that I would be looking at. Let me post the link to that video. Bear with me here. I got to find the link to it. Got it in my favorites because it's something that comes. It's a big reason why I made that video as well, because I wanted people to have a video that they could go through for a common problem. And I just wanted to go through kind of all the things that I see that go with that. All right. So if you go to the chat, I posted a link to that video. Obviously, there's more things that can lead to chunks, you know, but those are really the main things that I would be looking at. All right, keep the questions coming. We got about 45 minutes left. And I got like a fly buzzing around my window or something. It's weird. I don't see a fly anywhere, but it sounds like it's like right in my window. No problem, Jeff. Glad to help. So Willis says, is the right palm in the same position on chip shots? Is it in on full shots at contact? I mean, your grip can change a little bit with chip shots just depending on what you're trying to do, right? So for example, let's say I'm trying to hit a high chip, right? Well, if I'm trying to hit a higher chip, I may release the club a little bit more, right? And have a little less shaft lean at contact. So that's going to put my palm in a different place, right? So I may release it a little bit more. I'm still going to have some shaft lean, but I may release it a little more. If I'm trying to hit a low chip, right, I may have my hands quite a bit forward. My palm of my hand may be quite a bit further angled down. Also, if I'm trying to hit a shot where I'm having a little bit more toe down, I may grip the club a little bit more in my palm and a little bit less in my fingers, almost like a putting grip, similar, right? So it's not necessarily going to be the exact same. A lot of it's going to depend on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit, the trajectory of the shot, the position of where your hand is during the swing, and then just with the grip can depend on, how you need to hold the club to hit the shot that you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to hit that toe down kind of chip, that can be a little bit easier to get underneath the ball. Like if you have a really tight lie or something like that, then you may hold the club a little bit differently. So Aaron East says, how do I flatten my swing out? Everyone makes comment about high. I think he means about how high my swing is. I hit the ceiling on friend's basement with long clubs. Well, you may not even need to, right? There's lots and lots of really, really great golfers that have very upright swings. Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, Bubba Watson, Tom Watson. You can name Jack Nicklaus, right? All these golfers had pretty upright swings. So I wouldn't even say it's necessarily an issue. An upright swing in of itself is not an issue. What I would, if you're looking to get better at golf, what I would recommend doing is look at what your ball flight and contact issues are, and then work on your things in your swing that directly improve those things, right? What you don't want to do is take, advice from someone who, is your friend, but may not necessarily know what they're talking about, when it comes to the golf swing and things like that. They might just be making a comment like, you have a very upright swing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So you have to look at, what you need to do. So I will tell you right now, I don't know that I've actually worked on flattening someone's swing out for them, that they're too upright. It's more about how you're bringing the club down. So if I were you, I'd just keep your upright swing. And if there's actually a ball flight and contact issue that's stemming from it, then I would work directly on that ball flight or contact issue. But I wouldn't worry about your upright swing. It's not really a problem. My ball flight is actually high and loft and lose a lot of distance. Yeah, so that's coming from adding loft at impact, right? That's not coming from having an upright swing. That's more than likely from just early releasing the club, right? So what I'd recommend doing is just work through the top speed golf system. As you may have seen by looking at the top speed golf system, there's nothing in there about having a too upright or too flat swing. Either one of them can work. So you have to do what works best for you. Um, so I wouldn't even recommend trying to change an upright swing to a flatter swing, because you're more than likely going to lose distance because you're giving yourself less space and time to accelerate the club, right? So, but if you do want to change it, it's just going to take reps looking at yourself while you're doing it. Get in the mirror, look at yourself when you go up to the top, and then start making down swings from there, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Go slow, go as slow as you have to go to be able to do it. Put in the reps if it's something that you really want to change, but that's how you can do it. You can use something like the like a swing plate, that has like the extender basically on it, and basically they sell it with the kind of the extender on there. And basically what it would do is you would have this kind of like at an angle, and you would want your arm to kind of be below that, right? And then that would kind of force you to get, because if I got my arms too upright, I would hit this, right? So I would want to have this to keep my arms from getting too upright, if that was actually a problem. But you don't. I don't recommend just changing your swing because your friends say your swing is very upright, because that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you're going to spend a lot of time. You would to change that. You'd have to spend a lot of time and repetition working on it to change it, and it may not make you better. It will more than likely, it may actually make you worse, because you're trying to hit the ball from somewhere you don't know how to hit it from. So I would recommend working on this. So if you're hitting the ball really high, I would work on something like the stick drill, right? Take an alignment stick, put it down the shaft. Because if you're hitting it really high, it means that you're early releasing, you're adding a lot of loft. So you're coming in and you're like this, right? You may be like that. So to fix that, what I do is I do the stick drill, take an alignment stick, put it down the shaft like this, and now you're going to make swings. I would start out with shorter, slower swings. Anything you change in your swing, it's not going to be something. I think people have this idea that, oh, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. It just doesn't work that way. When you're going at full speed, your brain has a program for what it knows how to do at full speed, right? So in order to change that program, you have to train it, right? So I equate it to learning how to type, right? Imagine just telling someone to how to type, right, and then just expecting them to type very, very quickly doing that. No, you have to train it. So it's the same kind of thing. You're gonna have to train. So I recommend doing like the stick drill if you're struggling with what you're talking about. Will the stick drill help in tucking the elbow on the downswing? I mean, not directly, but you may do it intuitively to get it to work, right? Because if you're getting your right elbow out away from you, you're going to release it, right? So it may force you to kind of get that elbow in. But yeah, I mean, making swings, because a lot of times people have trouble tucking the elbow because it just gets out too far away from them at the top. So doing a drill like the ball between the elbows, like taking a small ball, putting it between your elbows, and then keeping it between your elbows at the top of the swing, that will make it easier to kind of just move that arm back down and into that position. Because like I said, a lot of times I don't have a problem with a flaring elbow. It's just that when you have that flaring elbow, if you have a longer swing, you can definitely get away with it much more easily because you have more time to move it into the right position. Right, so like a Jack Nicklaus, for example, had a flaring elbow at the top, but he had a very long swing, so he had time to put that into position. If John Rahm had a flying elbow, he wouldn't be John Rahm, right? If he was only bringing the club up to here and he had a flying elbow, it'd be very difficult to move that into position. That's why John Rahm looks like this. He's got the elbow underneath and he's fairly laid off because he doesn't have time to get the club in position. He has to have that club in position to begin with. So So yeah, ball between the elbows. I mean, you could do the ball between the elbows and the stick drill at the same time, um, as well. If that's something that you're struggling with, but a lot of times, you'll get that elbow in a position because you're um, because out of necessity. So Aaron E says, "What is the best way to control the backswing to prevent from overswinging? I'm really flexible and tend to overswing in the backswing. I try to shorten it, but it seems to add more problems." Well, overswinging usually comes from poor spine angle, right? So that's really where that comes from. As long as you have a good spine angle, you're not swaying your hips and leaning your spine toward the target. You're really not going to be overswinging, unless you're just swinging too hard, right? You're just swinging out of your shoes. So and really, so here's what it comes down to. Overswinging comes from putting yourself out of position, right? The thing that gets out of position is going to be your spine. So I would work through the stable fluid spine course if that is what's happening. But if you're not, if your spine angle is good, and I guess my question is, what is leading you to say that you're overswinging? What's actually happening that you're doing that's telling you that you're overswinging? That would be, because I think a lot of people feel like they're overswinging when in reality it's either they're just swinging too hard, right? Which if you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face, that's not really a problem, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. You're not. You may feel like you're overswinging, but you're, as long as you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face, overswing as much as you want. It doesn't really matter, right? So overswinging, what problem is actually happening that's coming from the overswing? I'm sensing a little bit of a theme, right? With Aaron here, is that he's thinking that there are things that are going on, but he's mentioned that it's early release is really the main problem. So that's what I would recommend looking at, is what was the early release that's causing the high loft, the high shots, right? That's what I'd be working on. Overswing. I've had students come to me and say that they're overswinging, but I think they just feel like they're overswinging, or their friends are telling them they're overswinging. They can't actually tell me what's actually happening, right? This is kind of more like a buzzword, right? So what I would define as overswinging is when we get ourselves out of position, right? We're our spine angles are off, right? Because if my spine angle is, if I have a good spine angle, right, my swing's going to look like this. But if I have a bad spine angle, my swing is getting longer, right? But my hips are going that way, and my spine's going that way, right? That would be overswinging. So working on the stable fluid spine course may be what you need to do, right? That's kind of the main thing that I would say is coming from the overswinging. And that also, that's why, because it seems like the things that you're talking about that you're doing, it's all in an effort to feel very powerful, right? And it's going to make it very, very difficult to change if it doesn't feel powerful. So that's why I don't recommend trying to change an upright swing, because it's not going to feel very powerful when you do it, and you're going to want to go back to the upright swing for something that feels powerful, right? So yeah, I would recommend not worrying about the things in the golf swing that matter the most, which is really the top speed golf system and shallowing out the club. That's what I would focus on. And then the other overswinging is just, where you're just swinging too hard and you're missing the middle of the face. So really, it comes down to you just got to slow down. Slow down. A good drill that I would recommend doing if you're someone who's just going too fast, right? Your tempo and your rhythm and everything is just too fast. There's several things that you can do. One thing would be like the kickstand drill, where you hit balls kind of off your lead foot, right? So when I do this, I really can't overswing and swing outside of myself, right? I can't swing beyond my means, because if I do, I'm going to fall over, right? So kind of this is like anything that kind of makes you off balance is going to force you to kind of rein it in a little bit, because you'll fall on your face if you overswing, right? So that would be one. Another one would be to take like your 150-yard club. Doesn't have to be exactly 150 yards, just somewhere in that area. And so basically, like usually that's going to be a middle iron, 8, 9 iron for most people. And you take that club and you make a full swing, but you literally hit it half the distance. Now you're still hitting it solid, but you're just taking a really slow swing. So you'd literally hit it like 75 yards. Just get some shots doing that, right? And then gradually build up the speed from there to find where your happy medium is. That could be a great drill for you to do as well. All right, keep the questions coming. We got about 25 minutes left here. Aaron E says, sounds good. It's frustrating when people are smashing their shots. I am typically 1 or 2 irons off of those. I'm 6'3", hit 7 iron 145 and 6 iron 155. You really just got to look at the club head speed, right? Because the club head speed is what kind of dictates your, how far you can hit the ball. It's really the limiter, right? So if you don't have as much club head speed than them, right, then I'd work on maybe creating more club head speed, maybe working through the 20-minute distance fix. It could be the release a little bit. If you're coming in an early release, adding a lot of loft, working on getting the release, working through the top speed golf system and getting the release in a good spot, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the, what I would recommend doing is kind of look at what your club head speed is. If that's the problem, then work on adding more speed. If it's not the problem, then I would work, if you have just as much speed as them, but you're hitting it 1 or 2 irons shorter, well, then it's about the energy that you're transferring to the ball, right? You have the potential energy, right? You might have the potential energy, but you need to have the energy transferring to the ball. So if you're not transferring that energy to the ball, it's either because you're not hitting the ball in the center of the face. That's something that you can test. Spray foot powder spray on the club face, see where you're hitting it. Or a club head speed. My speed of the ball and club speed are low. Yeah, so I would work on getting your club head speed up if you want to hit it farther, right? That would kind of be the main thing. So I would work through the 20-minute distance fix if speed is really the problem, right? Because your ball speed is slow because your club head speed is slow, right? So that's what I'm saying. If your club head speed is the same as these other people, but they're hitting it farther, then it's about you're not using your speed to get you have the potential, right? But you're not using it. So it means that you're either not hitting it in the middle of the face, or maybe you're chunking everything, or you're adding a lot of loft or whatever it might be. So I'd be working on whatever that specific thing is. And then, if you don't have a lot of club head speed, then you're not going to have as much ball speed either, because you're not going to get more ball speed than they are, because there's only so much ball speed you can get from a certain amount of club head speed. Club head speed is the limiter, right? So if you don't have enough club head speed, you're not going to have good. If you don't have high club head speed, you're not going to have high ball speed either. So for a driver, for example, I always say the driver because it's the easiest one to, as far as the numbers go. Your driver ball speed for a well-struck shot is going to be about 1.5 times the club head speed, right? So if you swing 100 miles an hour, a good ball speed for that would be 150 miles an hour, right? So if you're swinging, let's say that you're swinging 90 miles an hour, right? And your friends are swinging 100 miles an hour, their ball speed's 150 miles an hour, and your ball speed might be, 135 miles an hour, right? Well, you're not going to be able to get your ball speed to be higher than theirs if your club head speed doesn't go up, right? If their ball speed's good too. So you're not going to be able to get 160 ball speed from 90 miles an hour of club head speed, right? Not without illegal clubs, right? You'd have to have illegal clubs or balls or something like that. But if you have, USGA, RNA sanctioned clubs, right? Which any club that you buy is going to be that. You'd have to kind of doctor it, which you can doctor clubs, but you'd kind of have to doctor the club to get it to be illegal. You're not going to be able to get that speed. So it sounds like you need to work on club head speed. And to work on club head speed, I recommend working through the 20-minute distance fix. You can get there by clicking the instruction tab and then clicking the 20-minute distance fix from there. The club head speed affected from the casting motion of the downswing. It's certainly part of it. There are lag drills in the 20-minute distance fix that you go through. Yes, casting can be, depends on how you're doing it, because everyone casts in the swing. Everyone. It's just a matter of when you cast it, right? So, if you're talking about casting, that's basically just this motion here. Everyone does that in the swing. There's nobody that goes through the swing like this. Everyone does this motion in the swing, right? So it's a matter of when you're doing that, right? So, but there are lag drills in the 20-minute distance fix. There's also the top speed lag system. If you're struggling with that, that'd be something I would look at. That's within the top speed golf system. So it sounds like you got options of stuff to work on. It's just a matter of you just gotta go do it. Go start putting in the reps. Start putting in the work, and you'll start. If you compound those over time, you're going to start seeing some differences. No problem, Aaron. Glad to help. Tom S says, if no real golf questions left, just curious, what golf course is used for training videos? It seems like Clay is on tee boxes and fairways when no one else is around. Yeah, so uh, most of the videos that you're seeing are probably done at Legacy Golf Club, and it's in Longwood, I think, technically Florida. We also have done some videos at Heathrow. Those are both owned by the same company, and they're very close to each other. So, depending on what we're doing, we may go to one over the other. Some of the earlier videos were at, I believe it's West Orange Country Club in Orlando. So a lot of times you'll see videos where we're on tee boxes, nobody is around because the videos are shot on Mondays when the course is closed. It's like a maintenance day. So we're able to go out there and shoot videos during those times. All right, so Steve W says, what is your view of the flex putter? I don't know what that is. So I don't really have a view, I guess. Sorry, Steve. I'm guessing it's some sort of putting training aid. Let me flex putter. So it's just a putter with a flexi shaft. Yeah, I mean, um, it can be helpful to kind of because I think that you're. So here's the thing that we have to understand with putting. Putting is one of the simplest things to improve, um, because it's very well known what the correct parameter or what the most important parameters are for putting. So whenever you look at something, you have to look at, does it improve these parameters, right? So putting comes down to four things. It's line, right? Are you seeing the right line and are you hitting it on the right line? Speed, right? So are you hitting it at the right speed? Are you giving the ball the proper amount of energy, right? And if you're not, you got to break down why that reason is. Is it the skill of applying the speed? Is it you're not hitting it in the middle of the face? You stubbing the putter? What's going on there, right? So speed, green reading, that flex putter is going to have nothing to do with that. But green reading is a skill, right? And then mentality, which I would say the flex putter probably has nothing to do with that. Mentality is just like the mental part of it, right? So, having the mentality of thinking you're going to make every single putt, there's a lot that goes into it, right? I could see how the flex putter could help you to hit the ball on the right line, because if you're herky jerky with your stroke, that's kind of what I feel like the flex putter is probably helping you to do. It's helping you to kind of smooth things out. So I think that having kind of a jerky stroke can definitely lead to hitting the ball on the wrong line. Has nothing to do with seeing the line, that part of it, but hitting the ball on the right line, I could definitely see how it could be beneficial with how smooth, with maybe smoothing you out a little bit. So if you have like a jerky stroke, yeah, maybe that could be, because it can help introduce some flow to your stroke, and that can help with speed control as well. Because I talked about speed, right? So if you have like a jerky stroke motion and you struggle with speed on the greens, controlling the speed, then it's possible. But you just don't know until you really try it. It's kind of one of those things where you just don't know until you try it. So I've never used it. I've never used a flexi putter. I've played around with the lag shot and stuff like that. And I think those things can be beneficial to help you kind of smooth out and load up the shaft. But putting is different than like the full swing. You're not like trying to load up the shaft. But I could see how that could maybe smooth you out a little bit if you have a jerky stroke, because when the putter is flexy, when you change directions, you do it very quickly. You can really feel the flex. So the goal would be to kind of not really feel a lot of flex in it, and that could help to kind of smooth you out a little bit. So I could see it being helpful, but I could also see it, not being helpful at all, right? But it looks like it's got some testimonials saying that it helped. So it's kind of, but it's not one of those things that the training that I believe that would help everybody. It may not even be beneficial for you. You may look at that and it's just a putting training aid. But I would say for people who have jerky strokes, it could help. If you have the yips or something like that, jerky stroke or something like that, I could see how it could be beneficial or helpful. But I just don't know for sure. But I could see how it could be. So Alfie says, please review setup changes for non-level greenside bunker shots. Example, ball below feet. Well, I mean, they're not all going to be the same. Bunkers are a little bit are tough, because you can end up with some weird stances, because the ground can suddenly be uneven. So it's really just trying to find as stable of a stance as you possibly can, and then going from there. So if you have a ball below your feet, right, it's really just going to be bending over more, right? That's really all it's going to be, and trying to find stability. Balls above your feet, you're going to be more upright. You have a downhill lie. The main thing is you go with the slopes, right? So if the ball's more upright, or if the ball's more above your feet, you're going to be standing taller, right? You don't want to stay like this, right? You're going to be standing taller, so that way you're kind of swinging with the slope, right? Just like if it's below your feet, you don't want to be standing really tall with the ball below your feet, and you're not going to be able to get down to the ball. So you're going to be bending over more, right? If the ball is on a downhill lie, right, you don't want to be in your normal position because you're going to tend to hit behind the ball. So you want to angle your body with the slope, so that way you can swing the club with the slope, right? So what we have to understand is that how the ball is going to come out with these different lies. So if the ball is more above your feet, right? If I put this angle finder on here, right? Here's a square face. If now it's above my feet, now look at where it's pointing. It's pointing to the left. If it's below my feet, which makes the handle higher, it's going to point the face more to the right. So the ball's below your feet, the ball's going to tend to go more out to the right for a right-handed golfer. If it's above your feet, it's going to go more to the left, right? But there really isn't a big setup change. It's just adjusting your body, your spine tilts really is what it is, right? So I'm going to stand more upright or bend over more. I'm going to be more toward the target for a downhill lie. And if it's a downhill lie, it's going to come out lower. If it's an uphill lie, it's going to come out higher. And I'm going to be more angled away, swinging with the slope. There really isn't any other, setup changes. All right, we got a few minutes left here. So Willis says, what is most important regarding course management? Knowing where the places to miss are, right? Basically knowing where the trouble is. It's really what it comes down to, is knowing where you're going to have penalty strokes. So, if there's water on the right-hand side, kind of want to aim more to the left, right? Give yourself a little bit more margin for error. If you're in the rough on the left hand side, that's way better than being in the water on the right hand side, right? So really, it just comes down to knowing where the trouble is, and then you know hitting it to the spot where it gives you the best chance to avoid the trouble. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to y'all next time.